Good morning and welcome to episode 19 of Wake Up West Orange. We've got some big plans for episode 20. We're definitely going to celebrate donuts or something, right?
Probably.
Sounds good.
So, thank you for welcoming us into your home this morning or wherever you're viewing from. So, Tim, we see that you survived the youth retreat this past weekend. How did it go?
It was really, really good. I know that people had some concerns about us doing it at this time of what's happening, but we were pretty careful. There was a lot of mask wearing and being aware of the situations at hand. And the camp where we stayed, a really awesome camp, not far from where we're located actually, had some rules and stuff. So, it was, but as far as what we did, man, it was a great weekend to just be together. And the ones that got to go, I think, were excited to just get that chance. The place, some of us got to fish a little bit in this really nice lake that was there. Andy I don't know. I didn't even see a fish. He caught like 5. So I don't understand. Of course, he was using bread and I was using a worm. Go figure. But yeah, he just kept. And Ken, his father, Lamar, was the same way. He and I just stood there watching Andy catch fish. So, but they had this real cool hammock area. It was like 10 hammocks all laid out in this kind of cool design. And so they all, hung out. And there was a lot of different things to do. But the point of the retreat, obviously, is what, we're kind of discussing, was they had a theme, SunQuest, the event that we usually go to on Labor Day weekend, did not happen in the way it normally would happen. It's normally at a hotel in Orlando and about 1,500 people and speakers and worship and classes and all that kind of stuff. And most of that happened, but it was all online. So we had to kind of figure out a way that we'd like to watch those resources. Some people had lock-ins, some people stayed home, some people did other events kind of like what we did. But so... You want to talk about
Yeah.
Well, it was called Created, and essentially it had to do with how God created everything, obviously, but more or less specifically us. And in Genesis 1, where all that sort of, we get that story, we get the telling of how things came to be, and the last day God creates people, man and woman, in His image, which is kind of a confusing, thing to try to understand. Does that mean we look like God, or is that more of an image of reflection of, you see a reflection of someone or a picture of someone, but it's not them. It's a close relation, if you will. And so they didn't really spend a lot of time on that, but I'm intrigued by that thought. But it's really more about you were created. And you were created by the perfect creator and for a purpose and for a plan of your life and for a reason that you could either spend your life worrying, trying to figure out what it is, or maybe you spend your life just expressing the way that you can in any way that God is a part of who you are and you are made in His image. So that comes out in many different ways, which we've kind of been talking about, obviously, just different things that can look like. I don't think anybody needs to let that go too far, but like I said, you can worry so much about trying to figure out your purpose that you miss the very thing that maybe was your purpose all along, if that makes any sense. But I don't know. What do y'all think about that?
Well, on a fundamental level, we're all made, our purpose is that relationship with God, but then we also have our unique purpose. So like Angie.
Yeah, I'm a teacher, but I almost missed that purpose. When I graduated high school, was convinced I was going to be the best journalist out there ever. And so I went to college with that in mind and absolutely positively hated it. God steered me clearly away from that. And I spent a hard semester, figuring out, okay, what is my purpose? And it kept coming back to kids. And when I look back at, my life up until that point, I had always been surrounded by kids. And I don't know, I just have a heart for it because of the way that God designed me. And so it was very evident. Okay, this is what it is you've got to do. And so I went into teaching, and teaching has changed so very much since, the time that I started, and especially right now. But
Really.
That was the understatement of Wake Up West Orange since episode 1.
Right.
Right, but I still get to have that same purpose.
Yes.
It's still reaching out to those kids and to teach them, and maybe not even in my school be able to say God's name, but hopefully be able to teach all about him just by the other things that I am able to say.
Yes. Well, and when you talk about your design, when things I have observed, sometimes being in a class in the past on a Wednesday night or different things, that your personality and your temperament, some things that, I consider myself patient, but sometimes, my kids or other kids, and, there's Angie just being patient and like redirecting, refocusing. And so, yes, you love kids. You're great. You're very creative. People have been able to see more of that through the Kids Connection things we've done in the gathering. But you also have that special temperament for it too. So that not everyone has.
Well, because if we were all the same, wouldn't that be a boring thing? And then
Yes,
we'd only
that's
have
true.
that one purpose be able to be fulfilled.
Yes.
Like, I don't know that I could do what you do with the teens and being able to stay up all hours, for all the trips and do all the different things.
Well, I think it's probably like you do. In a way, some of it, you want to mold them and nurture them and teach them, but at the same point, they go home. So, and I mean that in the nicest way with the teenagers. I love being around them. I really do. I enjoy, for the most part, being around students more so than adults. Because they help me feel young, but at the same point, you kind of get to that time where you're like, well, that's great. Now go to your parents. I don't stay with me anymore right now. So, that has to happen too, I guess. But this weekend was, as far as the trip and everything, it was no stress at all. They actually were probably all, well, I say this, in the guys section where all of us we were all asleep. By midnight or so. My understanding is the girls were up longer, and that's on the chaperones over there. If they wanted to stay up, they stayed up. But I think they were having fun, and that's great. That's great that they got to do that. But I like the way you explain, and I think Brian, y'all both have tapped into things about your nature that, Brian, for instance, thinks of others before himself quite often. And I think we probably were all supposed to have some of that in us, but you tend to, consider that, and you go visit people, or you think of people, and it's probably driving you nuts right now that you can't do that, because I know you like to do that, and I think people probably have missed seeing you. I will go, and I'm glad that I went, but for some reason, it's not necessarily my nature to think of that first. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of one of those things where we can either see that as a fault in people, or we can see that, well, but their nature is this instead, whatever that might be. And you're the same thing, I think, for teaching. I think people that do well with teaching, it's because they want to be there.
Well,
period.
Of all the angles of looking at the being created in Genesis 1, that one comes to my mind about, okay, so you have the triune God. Let us make man in our image. God himself is a community. Mm-hmm. So we were created for community. So yeah, there's many things. We have self-worth, self-value. When teens think about their self-esteem, and purpose. But one of those that comes to my mind with what you're sharing is that we were made for community. We were made for each other. And yeah, maybe some of us more so are more extroverts versus introverts. That's actually one of the reasons we started Wake Up West Orange, this webcast, was to hopefully be a bright spot for people in the middle of the week when we haven't been able to come together, like on Wednesday nights and for other things, was to at least be able to connect on this level and to be able to share together midweek. So So anyway, with that in mind, yeah, like just yesterday was Shirley Hutchinson's birthday. So I called her, didn't get her. She called me back, and I just got to share with her. And it had been a while since I'd connected with her. I've connected with her a few times since the COVID disruption. And we just started the World Changers series this past Sunday. And, she's making a difference there. I mean, you talk about disruption in schools, and all of us have faced it. With her being in an assisted living situation, they're only limited to their wing, and, they can't have family come and visit and those kind of things. So birthdays look different. Everything is so different for them. And yet she, in all of these tests, has a strong faith. And she's a very sociable person, and yet she is able to to minister to people there and make a difference, be a world changer. So,
well, to that point, before we were unable to go visit, just a couple of weeks before the quarantine kind of kicked in here, way back in March, which seems like so long ago, we went to see her and a couple of other people, and we couldn't find her. We were in the facility, and we had them page her and try to call her phone, which she had not kept with her, and they like knew that she was somewhere talking to people. That's what she
we would
does.
keep getting to people. They'd be like, "Yeah, she went that way." And, I saw Shirley.
And so we eventually
she was on the move.
She found us, and we were just like, "We got to go now," but thanks. But I think maybe, I don't think this is the first time anybody's ever come across this, and maybe it's not exactly right on point, but it does make me wonder that the hour, made in our likeness or image, the community part also has to do with the collectiveness of God's nature of Father, Son, and Spirit, Father, Spirit, and Son. If you think about those personalities as personalities individually, one's a little more outgoing than the other, one's a little more disciplinary than the other, and one was a little more soft in nature, maybe not extroverted, but still got its point across. I don't know if it might mean a little bit of that too, that we're made in their image, that sometimes, I'm a little bit more extroverted at times. It might not come across that way, but when I was a kid, I was extremely shy, except in certain circles or whatever with friends or family maybe. But for the most part, I wasn't going to say anything. Sorry that changed. But anyway, I wonder about that. Maybe that's part of what it meant too, like sort of the combination of God's nature, that everybody isn't going to be an extrovert. Everybody isn't going to be the one that can get out and speak or teach, but maybe it's the created part that we sort of delved into over the weekend. Some of it could be the person that just reaches out to their neighbors with care, or the hundreds and thousands of different ways that we all could find ourselves doing things for others, and that kind of flows into the world changer thing too, I'm sure, but that we're created for not so much a purpose that the whole world is going to necessarily know about it, but what if only 10 people ever knew? Is that not enough? Is it not enough that you changed one life, and who knows what that life might accomplish or impact in some other way? So, the created thing is not how many people clicked a heart on my Instagram post, but how many people's hearts did I touch? I think that's the greater goal that we ought to have.
Well, I think that when we think of a world changer, we think of Dr. Martin Luther King, as you mentioned, or you think of Thomas Edison, who had many inventions, and you think of somebody who has accomplishments. But maybe with what we're studying right now, we need to refocus that and think about the fact that it is to be us as a community that are changing our world. And it's not about the I, it's about the we, and about he going through us. That I think is a different way of looking at it, that most of us, I know I hadn't before we started studying this, really considered that, I don't know, it's not about that name being remembered, as you said. It's about how many little points of light do we have out there.
I thought a lot over this weekend and still am about a couple of things that people shared both in either lessons or in our post-lesson discussions that made me wonder, not so much am I doing my part, but are we helping each other do their part? And I think that goes along with some of the very things we've shared today. So, but thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.